Good morning, and thank you for joining me. This is Jerry. I am the owner and creator behind Heart and Hand Creations. I am working on a scrapbook folio, and I'm going to be making some pages that have interactive elements. And I thought I would go through the process and show you how to make some of these interactive elements for your pages in case you want to include them on a scrapbook that you're working on. But first, there are some pretty general tools that you'll need besides your paper embellishments, keepsakes, and photos. So I'm going to go through and show you some of the tools that I have readily available within arm's reach when I'm working on a new project. Okay? So with that, what you need is your paper, some scissors, some way to press your paper down. And I have seen people use credit cards or gift cards, and that's fine. That works perfectly well. Just make sure that when you're pressing it down, it doesn't bear down into the paper and cause creasing in places that you don't want it to. I'll have my glue and my paper towel and pencil. And so that is really what you need for your supplies, your tools, to make any of the interactive elements that go into your scrapbook and to adhere photographs. Oh, and I need the tape. I always have that close at hand. So pretty basic tools, just make sure they're photo friendly. And thank you. And with that, we'll get started. Okay, so let's get started. What we're going to make first today is a pocket, which I have here, and it won't matter what size pocket you want to make. The technique is going to be the same no matter what size pocket you need for your scrapbook. I'm also going to show you about making a flap. Now, in this interactive feature, this pocket is going to go onto this flap. So I thought I would go ahead and show you making this feature because it demonstrates both of those techniques. Before we get started, I want to make a comment about your work surface. I have a self-healing cutting mat underneath. I'm only got this white paper underneath for contrast so that you can see what I'm working with a little better. But what you want to do is make sure that you have something down underneath your project so that when you're using adhesives and cutting tools, you do not mess up any of your furniture. And it doesn't matter where you're crafting, where you're scrapbooking. It just needs to be clutter-free, sort of a clean surface and protected so that you don't ruin your furniture. Okay, so I've already pre-cut my elements that is going to create this feature. My flap is my folio cover is about 9 inches. So I want this flap to open to the left. And so I have cut this to be 8 3/4 inches tall so that it gives a little bit of space at the top of my cover and it fits inside that and isn't sticking up above the cover. I have a width of about 6 inches, but I need a hinge so that I can flip open my flap and a place that I can add glue so that it adheres to my folio. So what I've done is I've cut the width to be 6.5 inches because what I have done also, and what you'll need to do, is to score on the one side where you want your hinge by an extra 1/2 inch. So I always score at 1/2 inch. So on here, you can see as I turn this back, there's a score line there. So when I score this and then fold it and then adhere it to the folio, the final product is going to be 6 inches, which is the width I need. So you want to make sure that you cut that, adding your ½ inch, whichever side you want your hinge to be, add that ½ inch to your cutting guide. Some flaps flip up. If this was a flip up, then I would be cutting this at a 6-inch width, but I would add an extra ½ inch here to the top so that my hinge would be at the top so that I could flip it up. So I would actually cut that at 9 1/4, giving myself a ½ inch to work with and have a glue surface to adhere this onto the folio. Now on my pocket, you want your pocket to be so that one side is where you're going to slip your photos, your keepsakes, anything that you're going to keep safe and tucked into your album or folio. You want to have one side that is going to be free of any score lines. The other 3 are going to be scored. And in this case, the orientation of my pocket is going to be vertical. It's going to fit onto this page this way. And my opening is going to come in from right to left. So I have scored a ½ inch around these edges, these 3 edges. Okay, so you can see here is my ½ inch. I can fold it there, and you can see it folds easily because it's already been scored, and it's already been scored here. So for your cutting guide, what you want to do is if your pocket's going to go this way, and you're going to score on either side here, and it's a traditional pocket where the materials are going to go in from the top, you're going to have an extra inch on each side, on the cutting guide, so that you have a ½ inch here and a ½ inch here, giving you an extra inch of width so that these 2 sides will fold down. And then the height, you only add a ½ inch because this doesn't need to be scored. This is going to be left open. It doesn't need glue, and it's not going to be adhered onto the paper below. So I've scored on 3 sides. Always when you're scoring, what you're doing is pressing into the fibers of that paper and creating a valley. So it is more like a valley here, and which presses it down and creates a mountain on the backside. When I am folding my papers, I always fold into the mountain so that gives a nice clean edge here where the paper has already been pressed a little bit into, the fibers have been pressed in, and that gives a nice clean edge here on either side and at the bottom of your pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold my score lines, and I am going to use my paddle or spatula to press these down so that it is nice and flat for when I put in my pocket down and it doesn't create too much bulk. Now, before I do that, I always miter my corners where it's going to fold. So on this side here, it is scored on 2 sides. So where those score lines meet, it creates a square. Now, if I fold this down and then fold this under, this square is going to create bulk And you don't want that because your photographs and keepsakes are already going to cost bulk, and you don't need anything else doing that. So what I always do is I miter the corners, and you don't need any special tool for this except your scissors, because what we're going to do is cut across where they intersect. And I just eyeball that and cut across where they intersect. So that's where you end up here with this flat corner. And I will do this on this side too. Here, there is intersecting score lines that has created this square corner. And I'm going to simply cut through where they intersect. And then I have a flat corner. So this is what you end up with. So once again, my orientation is going to be a vertical, a long pocket. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this and burnish it. And burnish just means I'm going to press it with my paddle. And I always start in the middle and I work my way out. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to turn this so that I can push that out and score it. Now, burnish it. Now, what I'm going to do is just turn it over and get nice, crisp edge. And you can see here, it's nice and clean. So that when I'm gluing this down, I am going to put the glue on this flap that I just folded. So let me do that on either side, same thing. Okay, and the third side. Start in the middle and just kind of work your way out. Because if you start at one end and you start pressing, this can kind of go sideways and you may be off like a 16th or an 1/8 of an inch, which means it may overhang on your base below. Now, when I show you this, look at this corner. See how pretty that fits? And I didn't measure anything. I just mitered the corner. I just cut it across diagonally. And then here is this corner. I don't know if you can see that. And so that gives you a nice flat pocket. Now, I'm going to do the same thing here, only I'm not going to miter anything. Some people will miter these edges just off a little bit, just cut just a little sliver off to miter them. I don't do that because I like to have the complete surface to adhere it onto the base below. So I am just simply going to fold this under. Once again, I'm going to fold it toward the mountain so that the part that goes in the valley is the part on top. So I just fold under, start with the middle, work my way out. I'm going to turn it since I'm right-handed and go like that. And once again, this is my hinge because this flap is going to move. It's going to open so that it will be adhered onto my base below, and it's going to open this way. And see, this gives you more room to put your photos or journaling on. So it extends that page an extra 6 inches. And see, I can close it down on that hinge. And this this flap is then going to have a pocket. Now, when you are putting your elements together, make sure that before you start adding glue or tape, that you dry fit it to make sure that everything looks good. So I'm just going to place this on here to see if there's any overhang below, over the edge of the base below. This one, the line up of these two elements is going to be on this back edge, the hinge side. So my bottom of my pocket is going to line up with the hinge edge below. And so my pocket is going to open and things are going to go in from left to right. That actually looks pretty good. So I'm pleased with the way that is cut and folded. So I'm going to adhere this down. So, of course, I've got my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue. And this is what I'm going to use to fold this pocket. Put this pocket, adhere it to this base. Now, because I make albums that are already decorated, well, I do have some blank ones for sale in Etsy, but I am not going to glue but one side down because I'm going to come back and decorate this paper, and I need to have this open so that I can put decorative paper here and have my pocket then come on top of that. So I'm only going to glue one edge down. If you've got your scrapbook and you have decorative paper or something that you're going to use as your pocket, you could go ahead and do all three sides and put that down. So it just is depending on how you're creating your scrapbook elements, so that you can go ahead and put that down. But if I were to glue all three pieces down and I needed to put paper on this base, I would have paper with glue on it, sliding it into the pocket, and that gets to be a messy mess. So I start by just adhering the one side down. So I've got my glue and I've got my hinge where my fold, the bottom of the pocket, and then I am just simply going to zigzag some glue on here in no rhyme or reason. I'm not going to put too much because it's going to seep out, and I don't want that to seep out inside the pocket and cause the pocket to stick, because I want things to be able to slip in and out of there pretty easily for whoever purchases this folio. So you can see I've got my glue. Now I'm going to just pick this up so that I can see it. And I'm simply going to line these up so that they have that back edge. Make sure it's not hanging over. And it's not. Make sure these edges are lining up, which they are. Okay. Now I'm going to burnish it with my paddle, with my spatula. So I just simply burnish it or crease it down so that glue gives it a second or two to catch hold and for it to press into the fibers on each piece. And then I'm going to open this and see I've got a little piece here that has seeped out. So I'm going to use my handy dandy paper towel and then just rub that off. So now what I have is I have my base. I can put my decorative paper on here and then glue this down without making a mess and getting this paper messed up with remnants of dried glue. Okay, and so that is our pocket and our flap. So when this is all glued down, this is going to open, given 6 inches extra page space, and then it's going to close. Okay, and then this is the pocket that's going to store extra photos and keepsakes. And that is how you create a pocket. And it would be the same thing if it's a horizontal pocket. It's simply going to be glued down just in a different orientation, but you'll still have the score, the glue, and the burnishing. So it's a very easy technique. So I hope you will add pockets to some of your projects in the future. And now we'll go to the next segment. And thank you so much for joining me.